Hi, it's Sean with Crema, and today we're looking at a brand new Figma feature which has been a long time coming, and that is the Scroll To interaction. It's a feature that has existed in Sketch and InVision for a while. And I don't find that I need it a ton, but when I do need it, it seems like a really simple and practical feature to have, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the ability to click on an element or a button in your prototype and scroll to another specific point on that same page. I can show you what that looks like here. And it's really great when Figma releases a new feature. They have a community file that they release, and you can go in and play with this file and get to understand that tool and feature a bit more. So you can, I would highly suggest you go check out their Scroll To playground file. But something that they point out in their file is effectively like a really great use of Scroll To is in like web page design. So you can imagine you have this header element that's sticky here, and you have these navigational pieces there that link to other points in the page. So if I were to open up this prototype, this is exactly what you would expect to find. And it's great. It's a really simple feature, again, has been a long time coming and is going to be really useful. And then another thing that they had in their file that I've replicated here is the ability to scroll horizontally. So I've set up a frame here that's kind of like a carousel. And as we click these buttons here, we just scroll through those options. So this is nothing new that you won't find in Figma's playground file, but I wanted to show today how I created some of these elements specifically and how you can apply the new Scroll To interaction. So we'll first start by recreating this desktop frame. So I'm going to hit F and just choose the default frame there, and it doesn't really matter the height of it as long as the content ultimately hangs off of the frame. And what we'll do first is just recreate this header, and I'm going to do it by also making this a frame. It just makes it more flexible instead of making this a rectangle. So we'll turn it into this, we'll add a fill to it so that you'll be able to see some of the effects that we add to it, like this drop shadow. You can customize this if you want. But basically, I'm just going to recreate what I have over here, and there I just have some text in there. I have logo. So that sits by itself. I can center that and then draw that over closer. And I think I have that one 120 edges, 120 pixels from the edge. And what I'm going to do is recreate this over here. But I just have that text there. I'm just going to drag these out and duplicate those with Command D a couple times. I'm going to add these pieces to its own frame. So Command Option G, and that will wrap it in a frame, which allows me to do this auto layout piece. So now I have it set to automatically adjust horizontally, so that way as I type out these words here, all that content up there will adjust on its own, which is super convenient instead of having to manually place all those. Cool, and the same goes for this. I'm just going to kind of pull this back in. Cool, so that's our header, and we can hit Command R and rename it as such. So it's at the bottom of the page here. So navigation, actually it looks like that got pulled outside, so I'll pull that back into this frame itself. So now the header is there. It's the only element in the page right now, but we'll go ahead and hit Fix Position when scrolling, so that jumps it into its own section over here called Fix while the rest of the content scrolls. And that reminds me too, one of the key things you'll have to do is select this entire frame and select vertical scrolling. But you'll get this warning if you do it at this stage because it says there's no content hanging outside of the frame, so there's nothing to scroll to. But you'll see that that will happen when we add these cards. So we can also go ahead and add this color block behind there. I've just drawn a rectangle, and what's happening is that it's stuck inside of this header frame, so we can go ahead and pull that out. Then actually we can pull that down to the scrolls section. So I'm just going to call that color block. So that's the first couple things, and then we'll go ahead and recreate one of these cards. So I'm going to make this a frame as well, instead of a block of text or some, a rectangle. And we'll make that white. I think I have these quarter radius of that, corner radius. We'll add a drop shadow to this as well, maybe make it less garish. Something like that. We can go ahead and center this. So that's our frame, and we can rename it already and just call it section card or something. Go ahead and add some text to it. So this one will be just section title. I'm making it generic so that I can turn it into a component. And I'll go ahead and copy some of this text here. Click back into the frame, hit T and drag out loosely where I think it's going to sit. Cool. So I can go ahead and adjust all this stuff, make sure it's... I'm going to go ahead and hit this as well so that it shrinks back up to the text itself. So I've gone ahead and adjusted everything here, and this will allow me to effectively componentize this, so Command-Option-K, turn that into a component. But also I'll add that auto layout again, and it's going to be vertical this time. That way, if there is a section that you have, and it's much larger than this current one, it allows that card to grow on its own. So auto layout is incredibly powerful in Figma. So we've turned this into a component so that we can copy it. I'm holding Option and Shift so I can drag vertically down. And I'm going to add some space here. So 80 pixels there. So now you can see that the content's hanging off the page. Now, to be able to see that, you can unclip that there, and that will be useful for us going forward. So this is now... I'm now pulling these cards down the page a bit, and that one fell out of the frame, so I can place it back in there. So I'll go ahead and duplicate that a couple times. So this gives us our basic structure of how we'll then add these interactions from these navigation pieces to their appropriate sections. Okay, now it's time to start adding some interactions. First, we're going to click into this prototype tab here in the top right, and I'm going to hold Command, which lets me click into a nested item. I'm going to select Work and click and drag that plus icon down to this first card. Now I've grouped all of these section cards into a frame called Sections, and you'll see that if I select that overall frame, it's going to select the larger element. I want this specific card, so this Scroll To can snap to the top of that card. So by clicking and dragging, Figma already ascribes this Scroll To interaction, which is what we want. I've customized it a bit in my previous design, so it kind of retains some of those elements. I have it as a slower 1200 millisecond animation, and I'll address this Y offset in just a minute. I want to show you how this works when I don't mess with that. So I've dragged that down to here. I can go ahead and do that with these other ones. Make sure I'm clicking onto that specific card, each respective card, and that'll do contact us to the bottom one. And now what I can do is just go ahead and drag this little blue play button over. And this will be our starting frame. So if we click play again, it'll restart on this frame. And we can go ahead and click through here. So see how this header is going over this card because I didn't mess with that Y offset. So we'll go back and address that. I just want to show you how this works. And another thing you'll notice is we can't actually scroll all the way down to the contact us. There's no way for it to snap to because we don't have extra padding down here. So you see this section card ends right here. We can't scroll any farther. So we can address those couple things. First, we'll look at the Y offset. So we know that our header is 80 pixels high, and the spacing that I've given each card from each other is 80 pixels. And this is 80 pixels from this, this header image up here. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate a negative 160 pixels. And if I add that in there, so negative 160, you'll see right away if I return to this, that this work will snap right there and leave that 80 pixel gap. So what we're doing, we added the 80 pixel gap here plus the 80 pixels of the header, and now that's 160 pixel difference. So you'll see that if I click here, I haven't applied that there yet. So you can go ahead and replicate that across all of these. So all of these navigational pieces, you're going to want to have the same thing. That way the header's not covering it and you're just showing the content that you want them to see immediately. So you can go ahead and test that by scrolling here. Great, we're leaving that gap. So you'll see, again, we can't do what we're meant to do with this contact us because there's no padding down there. So we can go ahead and address that now. Because it's in a frame, I can actually go ahead and drag this frame out and create that padding that we want. So if I scroll down now, I have all this extra padding. If I click contact us, it should scroll right to where I want it to with all the extra padding. So you can do that. You can use this existing frame to do something like that, or we can just add a whole new frame by hitting F, and we'll draw this out down here. By default, it's going to be outside of our main desktop frame there because this content is so short. This frame clips off way down here. So we can go ahead and just rename this as padding. I'll go ahead and drag that inside here. So now it lives under the sections. And if I just center it there, you'll see that if I click back to our demo and I click contact us, this went a bit slow. It has enough padding here on the bottom to allow it to snap to the 80 pixels above. So there we go. And one other thing we're going to do is create a way, and I'll just copy this frame actually. Just copy that up, shrink it down. I'm holding Shift and Option, which allows me to shrink it from all dimensions. And I'll rename this one as Button, because what we're doing is putting a way for people to navigate back to the top of their webpage here. We will make it nearly black. This will read back to top. And because it's a frame, I can center all this text inside there, color it white. We could apply an auto layout or something like that. That's not super important for us right now. Though maybe I do want some better spacing in there. Cool. So that can be our button that lives just below that content, and it can, there, 120 there. Cool. So now we have extra padding down there with our back button there, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it pops into place there. Cool. In fact, we can probably shorten this up quite a lot. Yeah. So what we'll do here is do that same prototype tab, and we'll drag this, and we'll go all the way back up, and we'll just snap it to the header, so that when you're at the bottom of the page there, it snaps back, it keeps all of the same attributes we had, and we don't need any sort of offset there. So we can go ahead and demo that in its entirety. We'll click the Contact Us button, and then back to top. There we go. So those are the interactions that you would need for this vertical scrolling. Again, I think it's meant to replicate the way you would do anchor links or jump links on a web page. So that's a primary use for this. And one more thing that Figma likes to point out is that these connections are dynamic in that we can take this first card here and select this bottom card, and because they're in this frame together, we can swap these out and they switch places. You'll see that work is now attached to the bottom card here and Contact Us here. So, and I can even show you how that works is we'll click on work and it goes to the bottom, and Contact Us will bring us back up to the top. So there we go, we switched places, but those connections remained. Now we'll look at applying some of these same principles to a horizontal scrolling frame. And so to replicate this, I'll go ahead and select the same iPhone X frame. And I've just colored it one of their default colors. And we can go ahead and recreate some of these same elements that I've made. So I'm drawing out another frame. I'm going to add a white fill to it, and just make sure that it's 24 pixels from the edges. I'll show you, we're going to do some more offsets, this time some axis offset. I'm going to give it the section title. Looks like that is centered. We'll left align that text. And then I'll copy some of this lorem ipsum again and draw out a box and paste that in. Just making sure all these elements are nice and square. Actually, I'll go ahead and snap that to be the same way. So this frame can come up a bit. Cool. So all of our spacing is there. And we can take this whole frame and just name it section card again. Organize it how you like, and then Command Option K will turn it into a component that we can go ahead and hold Option and Shift and drag that out to the right. So you'll see that this just snapped outside of this larger iPhone X frame. And that's okay. We'll do a 16 pixel gap like that. Do one more, and then Command D for that last one. So these exist outside, so we can just go ahead and pull these back in. So now they're clipped, so we can go click this larger iPhone frame and reveal those. You can organize these how you like. Now I have them in descending order there. And I'm going to select each one of them by holding Shift and put this into a frame with Command Option G. So now that's in its own frame. And what that allows us to do is add this horizontal scrolling. So this has to be grouped before it can do that. And you'll see that I got this same notification that there's nothing hanging outside of this card frame. So to solve that, we'll select this whole thing. We'll just rename it sections again. So this warning means that this frame encapsulates all of the cards within there. So you can select that frame and you can hold Command, and that allows you to manipulate the frame bounds itself without moving the content inside. So we'll hold Command and drag this just to the edge, both of these edges to the edge of the iPhone. And so if I were to go back here, click Design, and click Content, that's going to be hidden like that. So now you'll see that we don't have that warning. And what that means is if we take this play button, and drag it way over here to be our starting frame, we'll close that, restart that. So you'll see that now we have the ability to scroll. I'm using my trackpad here, scroll horizontally. So that's what we want, but you'll see that even here at the end, this snaps to the edge of that. We don't really want that. So I'll show you how we can fix that with the axis offset. So we've created our section cards. We can quickly create a button in a similar way. I'm holding F. I'll make that a 40 pixel target. Give it a fill. And drop a number in there. You want to center that. Make sure that text is centered. Cool. So this will just be our button. And we can componentize that as well. So we'll drag that out, give it an 8 pixel gap there, and just Command D a couple times. Now these can be typed in because now these are instances of that larger button. But we can group this into a frame as well, and then center it in the page. So those are our main items here. Now we can look at how we can connect these to correspond to a specific card, which you'll be familiar with based on if you saw previously in the video the vertical scrolling. Now to assemble the page, it's going to be just like the previous vertical version that we did. So we'll select that first button there and click on the prototype tab. This little dot appears and we can drag this up to the specific card. So scroll to, that's what we want. All of these same attributes remain from our previous prototype, and we'll address the X offset in just a second. So we'll go ahead and drag this out. And because, actually so if I pull out, because this is a main component here, all of these instances already have this interaction where this arrow is being drawn to this first card. So that's, if you've done the interaction to the main component here, it's going to be attributed to all these other ones. Instead of clicking into the button and adding a whole new interaction to it, you can just hover over this existing arrow and redirect that to the appropriate card. So we can do that for the rest of these. So that one go to 3, and this one goes to the far. And again, it has all those attributes we want. We can go ahead and test it out. One, we're already here on the page, so it didn't move. So you'll see how it scrolls all the way to the far left of the prototype. And this one will lock in here at the right. And we want this gap to be this consistent 24 pixels on either side. So if we were to scroll this manually, you'll see that it has this 24 pixels here, and this next card is peeking out. So we can address that with that horizontal scroll. So we'll go to our main component here, select that, and we'll add a negative 24 pixel gap. And that, because it's these are all instances of that main component, it should apply all of that same spacing there for that offset. We'll go ahead and drop this to a snappier 300 millisecond transition. So we'll see here, it has that gap there across all of these. Now when we get to the end here, again, it's similar issue that I've run into with the vertical scroll, that there's no padding here at the end, so it wants to be anchored to the side. I haven't found a way around that. I haven't been able to discover if there's anything I can do here. So maybe instead of a negative, it's a positive 24. So I haven't found a way around that. So to address that, we can do something similar where we did with the vertical and added that extra spacing. I can take this card here and actually hold Option and Shift and drag this off. I'll just keep it nestled up right against it, and we can break this from this component instance. So we'll do Command Option B, and that breaks that apart. So now it's just a section, a frame on its own. We can remove some of the content inside here, and I had applied previously an auto layout that can go away. And we just want to make this a 0% opacity because we want the object there. We just want it invisible, and so we want that 24 pixel gap there. So we'll make that like that, and if we revisit our demo, we should be able to scroll over to see that. So there we go. We've effectively created this carousel with even spacing on all sides. You can swipe across like this, or you can click specific buttons to jump to a specific card. So that's how it works as a horizontal scroll. Again, these are demos that you can find in Figma's Playground file. I highly recommend you dive into that. But I wanted this video to be more of a larger exploration about how you can recreate some of those elements that you might see there. I hope this has been helpful for you, and if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We try to answer those as best as we can. And if you have any learnings for me, if there's a way to do this better, let me know. I'd love to improve. Thank you.